Obviously, the president has looked to California, specifically an oil pipeline that the state wanted to remain closed, encouraging Sable Oil to pump oil through it in order to offset what we're seeing in terms of energy prices. Does the president forcing these kind of issues, forcing offshore drilling in the Pacific, for example, is that an answer somewhat to this spike?
No. The answer is end the military conflict in Iran. He should never have gotten us into it in the first place. It has made gas prices spike. It lays at his feet, his actions, his conduct vis-a-vis Iran, period, full stop. His attempts to reopen the Sable Offshore Pipeline will have no impact on the prices. The amount of oil that moves through that pipeline is negligible, a fraction of 1%. We don't have a national energy emergency, despite the claims of the president. We produce more oil and gas than we actually use. And so the attempts for the Trump administration to take over the Sable Offshore Pipeline and provide an emergency permit and federalize it and to invoke the Defense Production Act is all inappropriate, tramples on California's state sovereignty, as well as violates existing court orders. So these things are not connected. Trump owns the increased prices across the country. And remember, this is someone who said he was going to lower prices on day one. He's done the opposite, not just with gas prices, but with his unlawful tariffs that we had to move to strike down, and we did, and then he imposed new tariffs, seemingly very committed to raising the cost for Americans and Californians. He's also turned his back on engaging in antitrust enforcement work, allowing for corporate consolidations that raise prices for Americans, and he's declined to protect consumers, such as trying to remove the authority of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. So time and time again, he has attacked the pocketbooks of Americans, raised prices instead of lowering them.
Well, $5.88 does have a sting, and I know that you're paying $6 in Los Angeles along with some other areas of California, Mr. Attorney General. Will you be looking into gouging? How bad could this get?
We always look at our price gouging laws to make sure that they're being complied with, especially after real emergencies like natural disasters, when the governor of California issues an emergency declaration. But we will do everything in our power to protect consumers, enforce the laws. But again, the reason for these spikes are Trump alone, his decision to engage in a military conflict with Iran. We have seen that. The data doesn't lie. Despite his attempts to deflect or blame others, he is responsible. These are Trump's increased gas prices.
Well, as you talk about protecting consumers, that obviously has many different facets, including ideas around competition and antitrust, Mr. Attorney General, which clearly there is a bit of a divide between the administration and the state of California when it comes to antitrust efforts, like a primary example being Paramount's merger with Warner Brothers. How are you thinking about that moving forward? Is it realistic that a state like California would be able to stop some of the federal government's moves in this space?
The difference between the Trump administration's view of antitrust law in California is we want to enforce antitrust law in California. Trump does not. The federal government has long traditionally played a historical role in enforcing antitrust law, a leadership role, the Department of Justice, the FTC. But Trump has turned his back on that role. He has abdicated his responsibility. He's retreating from doing the important work of holding corporations accountable when they break the law and engage in anti-competitive conduct, and he's failing to protect consumers in the process. So if he won't, we will. And California can step up, can do this important work along with other states if they wish. We have concurrent jurisdiction with the federal government. If the federal government fails to act, we can act. We can do everything that the federal government could do, should do, but is not doing, including suing to block a merger like Paramount Warner Brothers, if that's what we decide to do. We have said Paramount Warner Brothers is not a done deal. They have not cleared regulatory scrutiny. We are involved in a vigorous review right now, and we will decide what we will do in the future weeks.
We want to ask you about the Birthright citizenship case going before the Supreme Court this week, Mr. Attorney General. But just to be clear, we spoke with you the day that deal was approved. What's your timeline for deciding on whether to sue?
We will sue timely if we decide to sue at all. We are monitoring the scheduled shareholder vote, the regulatory scrutiny in Europe, And we believe that we still have a number of weeks to be able to make a final decision, including potentially, into early summer. So we will continue to monitor diligently all developments and make sure that if we decide to act, we'll act timely.
We also, of course, sued the Trump administration following the executive order on birthright citizenship, and that case is now going to be heard and argued before the Supreme Court this week. The first sentence of that amendment is, of course, all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. subject to the judiciary thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Is this already a victory for the president to have this language needing to be defined before the Supreme Court?
No. The federal government requested this, so the U.S. Supreme Court decided to accept this case. They do not have a strong case. They do not have much of a leg to stand on here. Every lower court leading up to the U.S. Supreme Court has found for my position, which is that the Constitution, the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment means what it says, that if you're born on American soil, you're an American, period, full stop. The federal government is advancing a fringe theory that no court has ever adopted, in saying that the 14th Amendment, the citizenship clause, does not mean what it says. And so we believe in the plain, unambiguous language of the Constitution, of a associated statute, the Immigration and Nationality Act, and the U.S. Supreme Court's own precedents. The Wong Kim Ark case in 1898 interpreted the citizenship clause to mean what it says, that if you're born on American soil, you're an American. And so this is long-standing law that's existed since the 14th Amendment back in 1868, the Wong Kim Ark interpretation of the 14th Amendment in 1898. This is 125 to 150 plus year old standing law that the Trump administration is trying to upend and redefine unconstitutionally what it means to be an American. So I think they're going to have a bad day in court tomorrow. They do not have the facts of the law on their side. And I think it will be another humiliating loss for Trump in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, but another victory for the rule of law, the Constitution, the democracy, and Americans.